Welcome to the show, Generation Health. This is a show designed to keep you informed on all of the latest research and news in personal health, whether it's prescriptions, supplements, lifestyle, diet, all of it. If it relates to your health, we want to talk about it. Our goal is to create more informed and empowered listeners. We want you to feel comfortable making choices about your own health. Taking point on our conversation, these two fine men, Dante DiMatteo, pharmacist, certified strength and conditioning specialist.
Yes, sir.
How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, across from me is not Dante. You're Joey DiMatteo. That's Dante. That's Joey DiMatteo, pharmacist and board certified clinical nutritionist. How are you, sir?
Very good. How about yourself?
I'm still good. I'm still good. It hasn't changed in the last 3 seconds. My name is Tyler Andrews. I am your host, and that is all I am. On our show today, we are going to talk about all things sleep. We are doing a sleep extravaganza. It's a smorgasbord of sleep. So much sleep. But it won't put you to sleep. At least that's the goal. We're going to talk about getting kids to sleep a little bit longer. We're going to talk about some basic healthy sleeping tips, fundamentals of sleep, Sleep 101. We also have a question totally unrelated that we're going to address right off the bat. But before that, I have to know, what's the most beautiful drive you've ever taken?
Wow. You first.
Yeah, mine was pretty easy. Pacific Coast Highway.
Oh.
We flew, my wife and I, Dana, we flew into San Francisco, drove to LA. I wish you would have taken longer to drive, honestly, but it was awesome. We stopped in Big Sur, Central Coast. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
California is beautiful.
It is.
I had to take back a lot of the mean things I'd said once I actually got there.
You appreciate the good things about it.
Yeah, not all the mean things. I mean, It's still California.
Right.
But yeah, it's gorgeous.
There's a lot to appreciate.
Yeah, you get there and you kind of go,
Sure.
oh, that's why people live here.
Yes.
All right. That makes sense. Dante?
My fiance and I took a trip with some friends out to Park City last winter.
Utah?
Park City, Utah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was the first time I had ever seen the mountains with snow covering them and all that kind of stuff. So it was
You'd never been to the mountains before?
The West is
the
beautiful.
West.
Oh, okay.
The West Coast mountains.
Yeah.
Yes. It was just a totally different ball game. So there wasn't one specific drive, I guess, but just driving around there in general was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
You know?
I love driving. I've driven here multiple times. There's a bunch of places I like. The hills in West Pennsylvania, East Ohio are gorgeous. I actually just took some really beautiful photographs out there because the fog was intense. There's some spots in Nashville area that are gorgeous. There's some places in East Tennessee that are phenomenal.
Did you drive through West Virginia?
I have.
Yeah.
I have driven through West Virginia, and that was cool. I wasn't paying as much attention because I was driving a U-Haul, one of those big ones that are almost a semi, and it was super full. And so as we were going up, I'd have it floored, and I'd be cresting about 45 miles an hour, and then we'd get to the top of the hill, and I'd go down, and we'd be doing like 80 by the time we hit the bottom, and it was just... It was rough.
Stay focused.
It was rough. I had to stay focused. But yes, West Virginia was beautiful. Recently, the most beautiful place, I drove with some friends out to Lubbock, Texas. And I have never been a fan of deserts or dryness or arid climates. I never thought I would like it. I never thought cactuses or any of that sort of thing would be pretty. And then when I was there by myself and had nobody to talk to and just was driving a truck, it was amazing.
Yeah, I like everything about the beauty of the West, from deserts to snow-covered mountains and everything in between. I really do.
Why are we here in
West.
Pittsburgh is the real question. Oh, man.
That's
all right,
funny.
so let's talk about sleep. So, fun fact, everyone sleeps. I learned that. It's not true. I knew that. I'm smart. There's a ton about sleep out there. We get questions about sleep all the time. It seems like a week doesn't go by that as we're working on a blog post or something that it's not related in some way to sleep. That, well, it could be that you're not getting enough sleep, or it could be that your sleep quality is really low. Doing this show, we've already talked about sleep a couple of times, that it's just come up as an ancillary thing.
I had a rough one last night. Didn't sleep well. I mean, it's just...
You didn't sleep well? I didn't either. Tell me about that. Why didn't you sleep well?
Not sure.
Just happens.
Sometimes I have these. Well, there's a couple of reasons, but one of them is I still sleep with my 5-year-old.
That'll do it.
I kind of take a bullet for mom and go sleep with him in another room, and not on the most comfortable bed. But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do with your family and your kids. But we need to draw a line there soon. But anyway, so that's part of it. And then it just hits. You go 5, 6, 7, 10 good nights in a row. One hits. Maybe I'm a little anxious about doing the podcast the next day, thinking, am I prepared enough? Thoughts start running, and so this is as pertinent as ever for me. Literally.
All right. Well, let's preach to the choir.
Yes.
Yeah. What is sleep?
Yeah. So let's start with a real textbooky definition.
What is it?
It's so sleep is a recurring, reversible neurobehavioral state of relative perceptual disengagement from and an unresponsiveness to the environment.
That makes no sense to me at all.
Typically accompanied by postural recumbence, behavioral quiescence, and closed eyes.
Okay. All right, Merriam-Webster.
So basically, yes, you're typically laying down, undisturbed, you're not really conscious per se.
Right, you're not engaging with the world.
Yes, and you can be woken up virtually at any point.
Easily
hopefully
reversible. Yeah.
Yes.
And easily reversible. That's a nice way of saying that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And recurring in the sense that there are recurring sleep cycles throughout the night, and recurring in the sense that there's 24 hours in a day, and each day, hopefully at some point you're going back to sleep. So,
yes, in theory.
Yes.
So why do we do this?
So the cop-out answer there would be nobody knows.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes. So there's much speculation about why we sleep. So in essence, how we came up with a good reason for why we sleep is to just look at what happens when you don't sleep, in the whole host of issues that tend to arise when somebody has fragmented sleep or they stay up all night or whatever the case. So that's where all of the sleep research and all of the sleep discovery came from, is just looking at the pathophysiology or the sort of the negative side of not getting sleep. So
kind of reverse engineering an explanation based on that. Okay.
Yes. And then as far as like all the evolutionary stuff, it's it's a whole cascade of certain things and theories and why it's important.
So it is very theoretical. The hard answer to why do we sleep is we don't know. We have lots of ideas, but we're not sure.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Exactly. So even if we back up a step and then look into a little bit more of the why.
Yeah.
Sleep. So basically it functions on a circadian rhythm, which I'm sure everybody's heard. So
we've heard that term. What does it mean?
Yes. So circadian rhythms are basically just 24-hour cycles. It's our body's natural internal clock that we follow. So the most well-known circadian cycle is the sleep-wake cycle. And so that is our sleep drive or sleep pressure cycle, that as the day goes on, we get more tired, feeling that sleep drive or sleep pressure to go to sleep. And then as the sun comes up, we have the drive to wake up. And there's, a whole host of hormones and such associated with what happens. And for example, let's just look at caffeine. So caffeine is something that is an adenosine receptor antagonist. So it's lowering something called adenosine, which is going to decrease the drive to sleep. So in normal conditions, adenosine is going up and allowing us to then fall asleep a little more easily. So that's
okay. So caffeine doesn't wake you up. It reduces your need to go to sleep, your perceived need to go to sleep. I guess is probably the better way to say it.
Essentially, yes.
Okay. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So that's just one part of it. So then sort of like I alluded to, light influences circadian rhythm. So
yeah, that seems universal. We all kind of have some sense of that, some knowledge of that. What does it, you said hormones. Is that what it plays a part in?
Yeah, it's involved in immune cell production. And as far as the hormones, it's involved in growth and stress hormone production and regulation. Also involved in regulating your blood pressure, overall cardiovascular health, insulin resistance. So basically the way that your body
Yeah.
responds to insulin, memory. There's a lot of data that shows, especially during the REM cycle, that that's when memories are kind of being implanted and formed. So you find that if you're not sleeping well, that you're not remembering as well what you studied or what you prepared for the day or two prior.
Those sounds like that's coming from a place of personal knowledge.
Absolutely. Mood.
Yeah.
Because that's
For
involved
sure.
in, because then there's that whole loop with hormones and with neurotransmitters, of which melatonin converts back and forth to serotonin, which is that old, when we talk about the depression linked neurotransmitter. So that's always in a big circle and chicken or egg type thing when you're talking about it relative to sleep. And then with children, you get even a little deeper because growth hormone regulation. So if kids aren't sleeping real well, now you've got some disruption in their growth hormone as well.
Wow. I mean, I know this is obvious, but sleep is really connected to everything. Mm-hmm. And it's so crazy that we don't fully understand exactly why, but we know it affects everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every species and every system within every species is truly affected when you're looking at everything from immune to hormones, thyroid specifically, your memory, so your brain, your cardiovascular health, your heart. I mean, you're talking literally every system in the body.
Yeah. That's amazing.
From an evolutionary perspective, all species need sleep, and notice it's the one thing that just kind of keeps getting preserved from generation to generation. Basically.
Yeah, right. So anything that is universal or near universal and across time, we know that it has a purpose, even if we don't know what the purpose is.
Exactly.
If it evolutionarily persists around the world and across time, it serves a function. Mm-hmm. So sleep serves a function.
And I think an interesting parallel too is with diet. When you think about the evolutionary aspect of the way we used to eat, that processed foods have thrown off our diet so much in the sense of what we're consuming. Mm-hmm. Too much sodium, not enough magnesium, myriad of things. I think we all know those. But I kind of parallel it to sleep because, again, back to technology, whether it's the technology of food and food processing, to now look at all these screens and all these lights in our face and look at, I mean, I know for me, it's always, and my son, my 5-year-old that I'm sleeping with at night, what's the last thing I'm trying to get him to turn off? His iPad. What's the last thing I want to turn off? My TV, because that's kind of, you work all day, you get them ready in the morning, you play with them when they come home, and now it's like, let me have a little bit of time in front of the TV, but it's then it's throwing off sleep. So again, I kind of parallel the diet and sleep from that standpoint, that technology, for all it's good, sets us back in that evolutionary regard regarding those two.
Yeah. So we kind of have to simplify to get things back on track
Exactly.
a little bit.
Yeah, that's
exact good way to put it.
That's a great analogy. Absolutely.
All right, Dante, what else you got? You got some more on here.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe we'll look at how much sleep is healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. We've talked about this before. I have fears that I don't sleep enough. Help me feel better or make me feel worse. Go ahead.
Yeah. So generally speaking, we sleep less as we age. And for reasons Joey mentioned, the youngest of the humans are going to sleep the most. So if we lump newborns, infants, toddlers, and preschool age children, we're going to see them needing sleep from anywhere from 10 to 17 hours.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Wow, exactly, right?
Yeah, and that's including that.
You wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah, exactly. That includes their naps and stuff too.
Okay.
Which I was wondering. I don't know many kids who can get 13 straight hours consistently.
My daughter gets close. She gets 12.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much every day.
That's legit.
Or 11. I think she's down to 11 now. And she's almost 8. So she takes after her mother. She likes to sleep. Anyway.
Yeah. So if we move up an age category, school age kids and teens require anywhere from like 8 to 11. So it just kind of keeps coming down all the way until we look at young adults and adults who require that magic 7 to 9 hours, which we've probably heard. And
with teens, at least in my experience with teens, it kind of fluctuates over time. I mean, when they're going through growth spurts or whatever, they'll need more sleep, and then sometimes they need a little less. But in general, it's What was it? You said 8
to 11.
8 to 11. All right. And then you said young adults, what was it?
7 to 9.
And that's what persists for how long? When does it start to taper off when you need even less?
That's where I think we need to set the bar.
Yeah.
I think as far as whether you're 55 into your 70s and 80s, that's still
so the
should
goal
be the
is
still the goal, even though, like we're alluding to, in your 70s and 80s, it is harder for the elderly population to maintain that level of sleep.
And I've seen that. I mean, I experienced that with my own grandparents. Why is that? Why is that as you get older, you sleep less? You just feel the need to sleep less.
There's definitely, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know there's got to be some sort of dysregulation with the sleep wake cycle in general, just as far as when your melatonin starts and stops and when your cortisol starts and stops to release, and some things that you're biologically up against, which at the same time, it's sort of happening naturally. So to sit here and say it's 100% bad is hard too.
Yeah.
All
it's
hormones
it's like a gray hair kind of thing. Your sleep changes. It's like I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And hormones play a role because man or woman, their hormones are down.
Yeah.
So when you start again back to that interplay with neurotransmitters and demand, but I think Dante's right in the sense that the goal should be maybe to rewind the clock back a little bit. In that sense, whenever you do hit that elderly age,
especially with all of the things that it affects. Mm-hmm. You mentioned one that I had forgotten about that I'd heard and I forgot is insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. Do we know exactly what the interplay there is?
It's got to be hormonal. All that I saw, it just has to do with weight in general, and the mechanism via weight is insulin.
So one of the reasons that you're eating right and you're exercising and you're still not losing weight could be that you're not sleeping enough.
Yes,
there's enough association.
Yeah,
that could be a plausible.
That's
reason.
Amazing.
Sure, and that's a tricky one too, right? It's like almost like another chicken or the egg thing,
right?
It's more about the association sometimes, and just kind of.
And you mentioned the other thing. We would be remiss not to mention women and their cycles are affected by sleep. Mm-hmm. Speak on that for a minute, if you got anything.
I mean, the main thing right off the bat is, pre-menopause.
Yeah.
And you start to deal with hot flashes. I mean, just at its most basic level, progesterone and estrogen getting out of balance, whether it's a decrease in progesterone, too quickly relative to estrogen or whatever it is, when that balance is off and you become a little estrogen dominant, that can set off mood issues. Progesterone itself can help with hot flashes from that standpoint, or literally at night for whatever reason, you're getting some of those night sweats. So your hormones are being regulated during sleep. You're not sleeping real well. For whatever reason, if they do find that at night, because progesterone, I guess that would be a large part of the reason is progesterone does help, and its metabolites do help women to fall asleep. So now you've got, potentially that drop, precipitating some of the hot flashes at night. So again, a chicken or egg vicious cycle.
Yeah. So you start sleeping less, which gives you less of the hormone, which makes you sleep less. Mm-hmm. And I get it.
And especially hormone regulation. I think sometimes that's different. It's not necessarily, I'm not sleeping, so my levels are going to be lower and they're going to keep dropping necessarily. Mm-hmm. It's a lot about, that's your time's body to heal and restore and regulate, whether it's insulin resistance as a regulation, your weight, your blood pressure. Those are regulation issues and homeostasis issues that your body's trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to hormones, it could just be, again, accelerating that or just a dysregulation there.
Yeah. Okay. I do have one thing to add just to where you kind of took that again. That's where during sleep is where our hunger hormones and our satiety hormones are regulated as well. And so that's a whole separate conversation, but when you look at the issues with obesity, insulin resistance, chicken or the egg, or what's happening, we at least know for sure that if you're missing meaningful sleep or not sleeping, then you're not giving those hunger and satiety signals the proper chance to restore their balance. Wow. So then you're just then you have no hope against our current environment. If you're waking up hungry all the time, and I do know for a fact when I miss sleep, hunger is almost certainly always through the roof.
That is so bizarre. And
some people, it's the other way.
A good note,
Yeah, it's
though.
a regulation issue.
Yeah.
It's a mood issue as well.
It's
The serotonin gets involved there as well in satiety. But I think that's a great point there.
So what I'm hearing is health is a whole big thing that you have to take care of all of the elements of. Yeah. And when you start letting something slack, start letting something go, it can have ripple effects throughout all of your life and really throw you for a loop.
Yeah. And ultimately, we talk about this a lot, and I think we've gone here in various ways, but what do you want to do? Do you just want to take Benadryl Ambien at night, crash, drink a ton of coffee in the morning? Do you know what I mean? Like it's at some point you could make those decisions about how you want to handle these side effects and issues. How deep into the root cause do you want to get? How, natural, quote unquote, do you want to be about resolutions and about your body and about your long-term health? I mean,
ideally, we want to encourage people to get back to where they naturally should be, where their body wants to be. Constantly, and doing things like caffeine, which I love. I've had 2 cups already this morning. Doing things like caffeine are a short-term fix to a often longer-term, more systemic problem that really deserves the attention necessary to fix it. Is that, am I saying that right?
Yeah, but at the same time, a cup of coffee or 2 in the morning and early afternoon, nothing wrong. I mean, we're always going to try to be more on the moderate side, and moderation and the good and bad, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
and as far as, where this all kind of comes back to, if theoretically you were going to work with a clinician, let's say a sleep specialist or Joyce or whoever, they're going to ultimately, no matter what they recommend, if it's a product or if it's a medication, if it's anything, they're still going to talk to you about recognizing behaviors, what to do with behaviors that you're noticing. So if we just use caffeine as the example, we can say, well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the 1 to 2 cups in the morning. I'm fine. But then when you notice that become 1 to 2 in the morning, 2 at 2, then, oh man, I go to the gym at night. I have another one at 4.
Yeah.
Those are the behaviors you can, not that you should know 100% what to do with those. Those are the ones you bring back to the clinician and say, hey, I've noticed that the 1 cup, 2 cups has become 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And I'm still tired.
You're out of balance.
It's more or less the noticing and then allowing somebody to help you sift through those. And that's hopefully what Joyce does, and what our aim to do here is as well.
Not letting something be the master of you.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's I had these notes. I'm really excited. Why do we snore?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So there's a few statistics. Upwards of 57% of men, 40% of women, and up to 27% of children are affected by snoring.
My second son has snored his entire life, and we made him sleep with his older brother, who has hated it his entire life.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. And then something that we'll get to. It's like, unless you have somebody in your room with you, a sibling or your sleeping partner, and you're snoring, you'll never know. And it's not always indicative of a bigger problem, but as we'll discuss, it certainly is a factor in terms of making sure that everything's good.
So what are the common reasons for snoring?
So,
I mean, having a stopped up nose, because you're sick.
As far as even just the shape of your body, let's say, if you're somebody, whether you're of normal weight or not, having a larger neck or having larger musculature in the neck or in the throat, that could play a role. That's a whole kind of like separate category as far as the shaping and such that can make somebody more susceptible to snoring.
So it could just be genetic. You're just built that way.
Definitely.
It could be that you're a bodybuilder and have massive amounts of so The Rock probably snores.
I would hedge my bet and say
yeah. And then if you're overweight,
yes,
especially significantly overweight, there's extra weight on your neck, and that can affect it.
Yes, that's a huge part. Alcohol can play a role. So chronic drinking, chronic nasal congestion, sedative medications, and then back to sort of the physiologic component, you might have larger tonsils. Your tongue size plays a role. It can be literally obstructing, sort of your normal airflow. Someone might have a deviated septum. There's nasal polyps. your jaw placement. I mean, there's a ton of things. Like you said, family history. If you never sleep on your side, always on your back. There's, sleep is.
So it sounds like there's kind of, I mean, I'm just going to go out on a limb here. Are there different types of snoring based on what is happening? Like if your tongue is big versus if you have massive tonsils versus if you're Dwayne Johnson?
So that's a good question. So ultimately what would happen, because I wondered this myself, because I'm planning on getting a sleep study. So a lot of this kind of hits home, at least at this moment. So
we'll check back.
Yeah. So yes, but hopefully the sleep study or the individual that you're working with can indicate kind of maybe what's the main culprit, because then that will dictate what kind of treatment, so to speak, that you would require. So if you need, we'll talk maybe a little bit about positive airway pressure via, a CPAP machine or an APAP machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's just actually, I'm not even going to go there. You may require that, or they even have dental appliances now. So
okay.
So if you are somebody that has a jaw or tonsils or something, just at the level of your mouth that is contributing to this, they now have other means of treating that besides just like the loud machines that everybody sort of is accustomed to. So yes, that's a huge part, but it's hard to say how exactly you get there. You will have to rely on kind of the results of your sleep study. But it would certainly help if your partner tells you you're snoring, it's your nose, it's your this, that sort of information could help the diagnosis.
My wife has told me that periodically she'll wake up from snoring, me snoring, not her, and she'll just tell me to roll over, and apparently I'm very obedient in my sleep, so I do, and it stops. So I guess that's a good thing, but there are folks that
when you're on your side.
No, I'm on my back.
But whenever you move to your side, it helps.
Yes.
Yeah, and then so
it's because I'm jacked.
I'm a back
It's because
sleeper too.
It's because I'm me and Dwayne Johnson.
So I guess if we even back up just a half a step, what is actually happening when you snore? So obviously when you're sleeping, you are relaxed. Your body is generally relaxed. And so the musculature of your neck and your throat, all of those relax as well. So almost kind of like that collapsing of that, maybe for the lack of a better term. And then the rattling that occurs as you inhale and exhale. Sound kind of bouncing off the soft palate, all of that. All of that sort of stuff is what's contributing to the actual like audible sound that somebody's hearing.
Got it. Okay.
So the rattling and the vibration is ultimately what's, kind of causing the noise.
Fascinating. So if you or someone you love snores quite a bit, they should go get a sleep study and try and get it taken care of?
Sure. I mean, that's one part of it. And I think we can eventually get to some of that. Definitely. Because we mentioned in another discussion the stop bang questionnaire, which is a validated questionnaire that will help determine whether you are maybe a candidate for a sleep study. And the very first question, or the very first letter, S in stop bang, stands for snoring. So it's not the end all be all, but it's it's a strike against you or for you in that case, in terms of determining what the next steps are.
Makes sense.
So it is very important, but not always sleep apnea.
Okay, total side jaunt. Why do we dream? Do we know this?
That's another.
Is this another one like we don't know why we sleep and we also don't know why we dream?
That's another funky one. Definitely.
It's kind of like a collection and like this amalgam of our thoughts throughout the day and our emotions throughout the day and what happens to us throughout the day. I mean, it's never something I've really dug into, but that's the gist of what I get.
That's the quick and dirty. I think the one explanation that I heard that was fairly compelling was it's like when maybe we'll put the clinical hat just to the side. So
okay,
it's like the maybe the unconscious part of the brain and the conscious part of the brain. It's like a byproduct of those two interacting, and then you end up with this weird story that you may or may not kind of remember. So it's your unconscious brain maybe bringing up things that you've subconsciously noticed or are learning,
processing through it.
You're processing it, and then the conscious side of you, maybe in REM sleep, we'll say, where brain activity is higher. It's like a.
I like that. Yeah.
But again, that's no more than sort of a theory.
And another is total. What little research I've done in such things, I did learn recently. Maybe you guys told me this, that there is a stage in sleep when you're dreaming that your body you're paralyzed. Your brain literally paralyzes you so that you don't act out what you're dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's 4 stages of sleep.
Yes.
We just call them N1, N2, N3, and then REM. So everything
not
is
N4?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So there's 3 non-REM stages. The 4th is REM sleep, and that's what you're alluding to, rapid eye movement.
Yeah.
Where brain activity is super high, but there's enough activity of other hormones that keep the body paralyzed, so to speak. But if somebody is acting out their dreams, then that's indicative of, I forget the name of the actual condition, but makes it very apparent that something's dysregulated.
They're dreaming in the wrong stage, essentially.
Yeah. And
Wow.
not all dreams occur in REM.
Yeah.
But the majority of dreams do. And they learned that because when starting to parse out the different sleep stages, when they woke people up out of the different phases that they were beginning to segment, when they woke people up out of REM, most of them had some sort of report of like, whoa, this was weird. I was just thinking this, or they began to build a story around what was happening when they were waking people up when brain activity was high, on like an electrical reading.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So we shouldn't wake people up in REM unless we really need to.
Yeah, like I'm in REM,
because that's when things get a little wild.
Yes.
Okay. And you said the narrative thing. I hadn't thought about that. Our brains do function in narratives. We think in terms of stories. That makes sense why a dream takes the form of a narrative, because even if you're just processing raw data of, this many inches of rain and that was my grocery bill, your brain turns it into a story about the flood that washed away all the groceries and whatever else.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy. So let's just say you have sleep apnea. And you're never entering a deeper sleep, and you're not going through the stages of sleep like you should be, and you're missing out on REM sleep, let's say, or you have much less REM sleep. That's when you start to see who might report memory impairment and those cognitive deficits and such, because if you never enter that state where your body and your brain is beginning to process those memories and reinforce the things that you were learning throughout the day, it's just more fuel to the fire.
That 7-8 hours doesn't mean too much at that point.
Yes.
And that's where alcohol can come in for sure, especially if you're drinking at night, decreases sleep quality. That's where benzodiazepines.
So I should be drinking in the day is what you're saying. No, that's not what you said. Okay. All right.
Sleep quality, and it's the same kind of mechanism via overstimulation of GABA, it's believed. But benzodiazepines like Xanax and lorazepam and alcohol, those are all going to help you fall asleep. But the quality of the sleep is very poor. Just one of the reasons, for what Dante was mentioning in terms of sleep quality and brain waves, etc.
Am I correct in thinking benzodiazepines are one of the things that are often used to help people go to sleep?
Yes.
Like people that are not able to sleep, here, take this pill.
Yeah.
So it'll get them to sleep, but not necessarily do the things that they need to do in that sleep.
Comes back to one of those things. Are you better off getting 7 hours of poor quality or 3 hours of quality or 3 hours of low quality or quality? There's some balance where even if it's poor quality sleep, you may still be better off at least getting something if it's that bad. But that's also why those drugs are meant to be used short term.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be a bridge to get you over some event or some issue or while you're looking into your sleep study, etc.
Grief, stress, those sorts of things.
Looking at why you snore, all that. But instead it becomes the
dependency thing. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you mentioned sleep apnea. What are some other common sleep disorders? What are some things you guys deal with on the regular as you're talking to people?
Yeah. So sleep apnea still is seemingly the biggest kind of low-hanging fruit, I would say, just because it's so underdiagnosed.
Sleep apnea is what?
Sleep apnea, there's two forms. There's obstructive sleep apnea and central sleep apnea. Central sleep apnea is way less common. I think it only affects 1 to 2% of the population. Obstructive is the more common one, the one that we're referring to as far as when snoring is occurring and that sort of stuff. So
what is apnea?
Apnea is just referring to apneic breathing, which is just referring to basically, moments in time where you literally stop breathing. Interrupted.
Got it. Okay, so sleep apnea is...
yes, they're abnormal reductions or pauses.
Interrupted breathing while you're sleeping.
Exactly.
Got it.
That would be characterized by a gasp or a choking sound or whatever. And so that's what the study would parse out. So
Okay.
yes, there's an obstruction of breathing.
So it's underdiagnosed. You said it's very rarely central sleep apnea. It's mostly obstructive sleep apnea.
Mostly obstructive, yes.
Okay. All right. What else?
What else in terms of sleep apnea, or do you want to move on? Sorry.
Whichever. I don't care.
Yeah.
You're the boss.
I mean, there's a chicken or egg with depression.
Yeah.
If you aren't sleeping, if you have insomnia, you have a 10-fold risk of developing depression.
Wow.
Which then, whenever you're depressed, some people don't want to sleep, other people just want to sleep all day.
Right.
So now you've got, that can be characterized as a sleep disorder. But it's not necessarily like, well, there's these 5 things that cause sleep disorder. I mean, you could parse it out if you really wanted to, but it's not as cut and dry as like, some other things.
Yeah.
If you start getting into narcolepsy, I mean, it's just such a specific issue. I mean, you're basically just having these sudden bouts of wanting to go to sleep during the day. I mean, those oftentimes require medications. That's such a specific, condition that's kind of, I don't want to say it's in a box, but you treat it very specifically and individually.
So people that affects will know that is something they are dealing with. That's not a revelation to anyone.
Yeah. It's tough though. Even, those all of these sorts of things are tough to diagnose.
So it sounds like sleep apnea is the far and away the biggest sleep disorder, I guess, or sleep problem that people deal with.
It's up there. I don't know statistically if it's bigger than like just straight up insomnia, which is, I think, important to even just kind of gloss over.
Yeah, what is
like
it?
They used to have different distinctions for types of insomnia, but now they've just broken it down to 2 forms, basically, acute and chronic.
Okay.
So chronic, you've had 3 days or more a week for 3 months, or kind of like over the years. That would be classified as chronic. And then acute is less than 3 months and may not occur 3 times a week. So that acute, even like Joey mentioned, that acute form of insomnia, that could be attributed maybe to, a death in the family, a divorce, crises,
stress,
those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So as a short-term solution, you oftentimes you do what you need to do to get your sleep.
Got it.
Chronic is where you need to kind of begin to parse out what's happening. And so, yes, you will ultimately treat those with medication potentially, or some supplements or whatever. Education is huge. They will also recommend, similar to treating depression and anxiety, you end up in cognitive behavioral therapy specific to insomnia.
Oh.
And so doing all those sorts of things together are critical to help kind of get somebody over the hump. And so even looking at some of the meds we mentioned, benzodiazepines, they're not typically recommended anymore at all for sleep. Like you're really hard pressed to see that benzo specifically used for sleep indications,
because they have a lot of rough side effects. Correct?
They do. There's a whole
them.
Yes, there's a whole host of issues, and they just I just want to say they really weren't working as well as you would think, especially because it's not necessarily putting you into those stages of sleep that you're looking for. So what they ultimately kind of did is they developed drugs similar to benzodiazepines, which is the ones like Ambien and Lunesta and Sonata, some of those, but they also carry some of the same risks, but are, I guess, potentially a little bit lesser, and they work a little
more
better.
effective for what they're supposed to be doing.
A little higher sleep quality. And they're literally, the class of drugs is called the non-benzodiazepines.
The Z drugs, yes.
Wow.
The Z drugs,
yes.
So, and those are, I've heard, I remember hearing, was it Rosie O'Donnell blamed some bad behavior on taking one of those?
Roseanne Barr, I think. Yeah,
that's sorry, not O'Donnell.
Yeah,
sorry,
Elon Musk
Roseanne Barr.
tweeting supposedly on Ambien can cause some people driving.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, just waking up and driving. I think a big thing with that too, with any of these, but particularly with these non-benzos, the Ambien type, is alcohol. Not necessarily, binge drinking, but a couple drinks.
Yeah.
You're used to taking your Ambien every night, but it ends up it's a Saturday night or whatever, and you have a couple or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, when you start mixing those two, because they're both interacting with GABA, you just exacerbate the potential for issues like that.
So you really need to pay attention to what the pharmacist says about don't drink when you take this.
Yeah. And
Like,
there's
it's
a
not
reason
a
why these
joke.
are controlled substances, et cetera. You know, whenever those terms start getting thrown around and you start to understand what you're really taking, then I do think that you start taking some of the risk profiles a little more seriously.
Sure.
And you want to understand what you're taking.
Okay.
And then that kind of, for whatever reason, just reminded me. So we talked a lot about depression, anxiety, and such already.
Yeah.
And so when, let's just say you and your clinician have decided to go that route, you're starting on an antidepressant, it's important for the clinician to know maybe what involvement sleep disturbances play for you, because there are certain antidepressants then that are a little more apt to help with sleep, which is key, because then you avoid potentially having to go to an Ambien or a Belsomra in those kinds.
Okay.
So if working with somebody, giving them the whole picture can ultimately help even decide to the level of which antidepressant to use, because it might have a little better sleep data, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's literally an antidepressant with a side effect of drowsiness.
Okay.
Is what some of them do, like mirtazapine or trazodone. They're literally utilizing the side effect. And it's become kind of with those two that the side effect's the main
Yes.
driver, maybe with
Got
those two
it.
specifically. But
Yes.
it's
Yes.
amazing how they all can.
All right. So let's pretend I'm having some trouble sleeping. And let's say it's not specific sleep apnea that needs to be fixed. Let's say that I'm just struggling a little bit to get to sleep. What are some things I need to do? What are some practical steps? Maybe some supplements. What are some things we should do before we start talking about benzos or non-benzo, whatever you called them?
Z-drugs.
Z-drugs. Oh, I get it. oh gosh.
That is pretty good.
Wow, I'm brilliant. All right.
Sleep hygiene is the term you see on Instagram, you see everywhere, and may not mean a whole lot of anything to anybody. So let's just talk about what that encompasses. So it's an umbrella term that refers to any behaviors or changes to the environment that would help set somebody up for better sleep. So hygiene in the sense that you brush your teeth before bed, hygiene in the sense that you wash between your toes, just to kind of cover the basics. So
whatever works for you.
Yes. And so what that breaks down to is that it is going to be highly individualized for people. So there's going to be certain things that might work for me, work for Joey, that may not work for Tyler. And so it's important to, before going into which sort of maybe behaviors you try to alter, you figure out maybe what's best for your situation. So if we broadly would look at day-to-day habits, our sleep schedule, a pre-bed routine, and sleep environment. So if we were to break those down, day-to-day habits would be looking at things such as definitely exercising, but not too close to bedtime. Making sure you have daily light exposure. So if possible, when you wake up, try to go outside or have some sort of exposure to light, just so you can do your best to help out the signaling and such that's occurring in the brain. So that's a big one. Avoiding nicotine if possible. Smoking or non-smoking nicotine, as nicotine is a stimulating, is basically a stimulant drug. Yes.
Yeah.
Like we had mentioned, reducing alcohol consumption, lighter meals closer to bedtime, and then this is a fun one: restricting in-bed activity to just sleep or other activities.
Marital activities.
Yes, marital activities.
Okay, so you mean the bed is for sleep and that.
Yes.
And that's, we can say it's sex. We're adults. We can say these words. That's what the bed is for. It's not for playing games. It's not for watching movies.
It's not for finishing emails, Yeah,
Oops.
exactly.
It's tough. We all do it.
Yeah.
It really is.
But that's why I have a laptop. Isn't that the whole point? So I can do it while I'm in bed?
Yeah. This is a campaign against big laptop right here.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have been getting in deep. I did not realize the can of worms we were opening with this.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about our two articles yet. One of them, this was a big old study. The fancy name here says Non-Pharmacological Interventions to Lengthen Sleep Duration in Healthy Children, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Okay, the end result was, how do you get kids to sleep longer without giving them medicine? It had something like 14,000 kids ultimately involved in this thing, ranging from very, very young to 17. And ultimately, the findings were in this systematic review and meta-analysis of 45 trials. Interventions to improve sleep in healthy children were associated with a small increase in sleep duration by about 10 minutes per night. Face-to-face delivery was an important component of interventions, but interventions that included earlier bedtimes were associated with 47 minutes longer sleep duration per night. So the bottom line was put them to bed earlier.
Yeah, I don't think
right?
it's a groundbreaking conclusion in the sense of what they found, but I do think it's always good for me as a parent to have that reinforced.
Yeah.
Because it's a constant issue, and it's, for me, and it's time I want to spend with them too.
Right.
So again, not shocking the results that they found that putting them to bed earlier had more effect than any of the other
Right.
Interventions. It's really number one by far and away. 47 minutes to 10 minutes
Right.
is just putting them to bed earlier.
47 minutes is an effective amount of sleep to gain. That makes a difference. 10 minutes, maybe not so much.
Right.
Okay. All right. Cool. That was good. The other one, this was going the other direction. We had an article about melatonin overuse, and it was CNN wringing their hands. Sorry, am I giving away the punchline? Let's see. It's by Sandy Lamott. CNN says more and more adults are taking over-the-counter melatonin to go to sleep, and some of them may be using it at dangerously high levels, a new study has found. Wow. Overall, use among the United States adult population is still, quote, relatively low, unquote. The study does, quote, document a significant many-fold increase in melatonin use in the past few years, unquote, said a sleep specialist, Rebecca Robbins, an instructor at the Division of Sleep Medicine for Harvard Medical School, who was not involved in the study. Experts worry that the pandemic's negative impact on sleep may have further increased the public's reliance on any type of prescription and over-the-counter sleep aid, Robbins said. Quote, in an associational study, we found that older adults who reported frequent use every night or most nights of a sleep aid, over-the-counter or prescription, had a higher risk of incident dementia and early mortality.
I mean, I can't even believe that something like this would get published. Honestly.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, I think it's that bad. They are not separating. The title is Too Much Melatonin.
Right.
And then they're lumping in essentially Ambien,
Right.
Benadryl, and benzos.
Yes.
Essentially lumping them in because they did not parse out which they were using. But somehow the title is Too Much Melatonin.
Mm-hmm.
And then their other parts, so it says that commercially available melatonin supplements ranged from 83% less to 478% more than the labeled content.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's obviously, I could see that being a little bit of a scary thing to hear, but that's whenever you deal with supplements, why we, of course, always preach quality.
Yes.
And you want to make sure you know where you're getting it.
Yes.
I mean, I would like to see some more data exactly on, was there one product that was these outliers
Sounds
that
like they were
allowed
using
them to put this massive range?
Really bad products.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, was that 2 out of the 100 products? So there's not a whole lot of data there. And then the other thing was 26% of the melatonin supplements contained serotonin. There's no
That's the opposite.
Well, I mean, there's no such thing as a serotonin supplement. You can take tryptophan. That's a serotonin precursor.
Okay.
But there's no and I even tried to look it up. And is there anything I'm missing? Is there some companies that make it? There's no serotonin.
I don't know. Maybe they were just referring to 5-HTP or something. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I just
don't-
found it to be between those few things.
Yeah.
I just found it to be a really.
It still just seems more reflective of a bigger issue with product contamination, like
Yeah.
you said. So you have to be super careful about what's in there. And then at the end of the day, we don't have a single product that contains more than 3 milligrams of melatonin.
3 is what we've got.
Yes. So whether or not maybe Joyce in consultation is recommending melatonin for other uses, as far as sleep or helping somebody decrease their onset to sleep, you're hard pressed to ever recommend anybody use more than 1 to 3 milligrams anyway. Kid, adult, there's no long-term data showing that it even really works any better anyway. So now if there's things like this coming out that might give people pause, we're not recommending 5 and 10 milligrams for the most part anyway.
Article was part of the article went on to talk about people taking like 10 times the amount of like 50 milligrams of melatonin.
It's like it's like the vitamin C flush and the magnesium stuff. It's like
there's some data on like up to 5 or 6, but that's really max. I mean, you're really not,
so if somebody's taking that much melatonin, they're way off the board. They're not playing by the rules anymore. Like in the same way that 1 glass of wine is not a problem, 10 glasses of wine are a problem.
Yes. And I think if the study took that tact as its focus, I can understand it more, but they went into some...
That's not normal behavior. Most people take their supplements as suggested by...
and not parsing out the drugs or even the Benadryl. I mean, you start, especially... Because
I loved all cause mortality. If you take too much of this, you will die.
Yeah. And it is important to note that Benadryl is, yes, an over-the-counter that we've all heard of that, take it for a bee sting, etc. And yes, it can help you sleep. But it does, in elderly, there is an increased incidence of dementia.
Yeah.
So you're directly, as soon as I see sleep, over-the-counter product and increased incidence of dementia, I'm thinking Benadryl is a possibility. Plus the benzodiazepines and the Z drugs can definitely lead to that too. So, but again, they're not parsing out OTC or prescription. Benadryl is a huge thing that directly increases dementia, and again, it's a melatonin headline.
Yeah, yeah.
And I still think
you're the bad guys.
It still seems as though clinician recommendations have not changed at this point, really.
No.
So that, yes, just like anything, whether we like it or not, it's out there. What do we do with it? Well, we just watch and see how have recommendations changed? Has the National Sleep Foundation and those bigger organizations, like, have they changed their position statements on this stuff? And at this point in time, it just doesn't seem like they have. So I think for the most part, you're fine taking 1 to 3 milligrams of melatonin.
Absolutely. It makes all the sense
and
in the
even
world to me.
our sleep supplement that we recommend called Essential Sleep, like Dante said, it has 3 milligrams per serving, which is 2 capsules.
Okay.
So you may see the 3 on there and think, well, I'm taking 2 or 3. That it's 3 milligrams per serving, 2 capsules. But what it's really trying to do is cover its base with the melatonin. Okay, you want to cover that base, so to say, of the sleep-wake cycle, but you're really looking at other ways to calm the brain. It has GABA directly in it itself. It has glycine and taurine, which are involved in GABA agonists. They help to basically to activate GABA and calm the brain that way. You've got L-theanine, which kind of works the opposite way. It's actually a glutamate. It's a glutamate agonist, but I don't want to get too into the minutia with this, but there's excitatory neurotransmitters, which will kind of limit to glutamate, and then there's inhibitory GABA. So you've got inhibitory GABA, which is calming. You've got excitatory glutamate, which is excitatory. It's
right.
So when they're out of balance for sleep, you could have major issues. If you're not inhibiting, your brain can be basically just way too active and awake. So L-theanine is so interesting because it's working via a different mechanism. It does hit glutamate, and usually when you're dealing with an agonist, you think, well, it's making more glutamate. It's pretending like it's glutamate, but it doesn't activate the glutamate receptor. So it kind of tags on to glutamate, but kind of deadens it and doesn't have an effect. So that's less excitatory availability in the brain. The product has 5-HTP, which is that precursor to melatonin, like they talked about, to serotonin. Precursor to serotonin, which they talked about in there. Also has B6, which helps you to convert your 5-HTP into serotonin. So when you look at, I threw a lot in there, but that's literally all in one product. So when we're looking at sleep and looking at products, a product to help somebody sleep, we're not recommending you're loading up on melatonin anyway.
Right.
We're looking at a complete, comprehensive, and like we always say, in the right doses.
Right.
Whether that's not too much, as in the case of melatonin, or enough to have effect, like 500 milligrams of glycine, 50 milligrams of 5-HTP, etc.
Makes sense. Very cool. Okay. I love that. I love these designed, balanced products that are there for a purpose. And we're not going to get way too much of something we shouldn't have too much of because we might die.
or has
Oh,
no
my
benefit.
Goodness. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the last thing here, and this is, we've already started touching on this. You talked about sleep hygiene. Forget my kids. I want to sleep longer. What should I be doing? Give me some real quick bullet point options, some things I need to take into account.
Yeah. So I think if you shift the focus to a pre-bed routine, and then also a normal sleep schedule. And so a normal sleep schedule, all I would be referring to is attempting to go to bed at the same time every night and wake up at the same time every morning.
Consistency is key.
Consistency. And the most difficult part that I've noticed even for myself is weekdays versus weekends.
Yep.
We're all in the
100%.
mindset of I'll sleep in an extra couple hours on Saturday, or I'll go to bed a few hours later on Saturday night or whatever, which I'm not saying that's easy to do, but it should be noted.
Yeah.
The flip side, if we look at pre-bed routine, it's key to have a delineated time to wind down. So whether that's an hour, 30 minutes, that's the time where you begin to turn the lights down, use your dimmers, put the computers away, maybe turn the TV off a little bit sooner, put the emails away, those sorts of things. And then I really like this one. Once you're in bed and you're attempting to go to sleep, if you are tossing or turning and you notice it's been 10 minutes, 20 minutes, don't try to force it. Get out of bed, hop into a chair, grab a book that calms you down, or throw on some music that calms you down. Find whatever habit that really worked for you and just regress to that instead of just staying in bed, tossing and turning, because then you begin to sort of shapeshift some odd behaviors in bed. You're meant to be in there to sleep, and the last thing you want to do if sleeping is a challenge is face it head on while you're in bed.
Right. It creates some strange associations of I get in bed and then I toss and turn. You're saying no.
Yes.
Bed is for sleep. If you're tossing and turning, get up, go read a book in another room with the dim light, and then when you feel tired, go to bed where you sleep.
Yep.
Because that's
what
what
kind of even hit home for me, because I mentioned earlier, I rarely have trouble sleeping, but when I do, it can be kind of bad, and it's intermittent, and it's something like that. I'm like fighting it. I'm like, oh, it's one of those nights, man. What do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead, I love that.
And that's another one that's still ultimately easier said than done.
Yeah.
Because then you got to get out of bed. Where's the room? My lights are off. My kid's gonna hear me. My cat's gonna hear me.
Yep.
It's who wants to really do it, but I know for a fact it beats the alternative.
Well, and I know for me, it's always a matter of, oh man, I'll fall asleep in the next 30 seconds. You know, it's that I don't want to admit that I'm not sleeping.
Yeah. And then the final layer to that, I mean, there's a laundry list of things you could do in addition to the routine. And then that last little tidbit would be to set the proper environment going into a night of sleep. So ensure that your bedroom is cool and dark, anywhere from 65 to 70 degrees. Make sure you picked a mattress or a comforter or pillow that you actually like.
Yeah.
Use blackout shades or eye masks or something to kind of, again, when we were talking about light signaling, how important that really is to circadian rhythm. Black out the lights if you can, wear the mask. That just tells your brain that, hey, it's dark and it's time to sleep. You're just like giving yourself these little pointers and reminders of what
cues.
Thank you. That was the word. Couldn't find it.
I'm glad I can be here.
That's great stuff, man.
And then also drowning out noise, whether that's a white noise machine or a fan.
Yep.
And then finally, if you like lavender, you can set the diffuser.
That was a twist. I didn't expect that one at the end.
I don't know how well that works.
I like it though. Sounds nice, right?
You don't know how you haven't tried that yet?
But don't use it. But I thought that was I saw that was recommended, and my mind jumped to like, oh yeah, just like light a candle, right, for the scents. But I'm like, no,
that's a bad idea.
Clearly, just stick
Use
to
the
scent.
diffuser.
Use a diffuser.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
I do like those candles, though.
Very cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for all of that. I have a lot to digest before bedtime tonight. Gonna make some changes. This is fantastic. If you have any questions, we would like to hear about them. Email us questions at askjoedimatteo.com. Questions at askjoedimatteo.com. If you need some private consultation, you can always talk to Joyce Gibb. If you want any of our products that we mentioned, especially the sleep essentials, Essential Sleep. Sorry. My bad.
We all do that.
That product doesn't exist anymore. Essential Sleeps or any of the others we talked about, you can find them on our website. That is askjoedimatteo.com, DIMATTEO.com. Guys, sleep well.
Yeah.